Well, good afternoon, and welcome back to another 30 Days Creative. Unfortunately, we're back inside. The weather is pretty horrific out there, so it's an inside one today. Sorry for that. Now, given the fact that we are inside, I will endeavour to keep this as quick as possible. No one wants to just listen to me ramble on while sitting inside. So, I actually just wanted to follow up on, I think it was Saturday week ago, where we had a little bit of a vlog outside talking about the importance of play. And in fact, well, play and experimentation. And in fact, in my most recent newsletter, subscribe below, it was the third part of my little mini series on how I personally try to foster a more creative mindset. Perhaps I'll talk about that in a future vlog in more detail. But one of the things that personally works for me is play and experimentation. Now, there's two things that I personally get out of play and experimentation. Number one, it's just a lot of fun. I've spoken about this many times before in the channel. I think we as photographers, nay, we as an adult human race, can take ourselves a little bit too seriously sometimes. I think our craft and our workflow can become very regimented, and especially if we're so used to photographing the bigger epic scene. We kind of choose an aperture, we drop in a filter, and we sort of hit the shot, and it can sometimes leave us, at least me personally, leave us very empty, even though the scene that we're photographing might be something incredible. And so play can almost bring back a little bit of enjoyment, and the images themselves don't really matter, I guess, or at least they're secondary to the enjoyment side of things. And after all, that should be, and I think even talking to any professionals out there, I think enjoyment in our craft has to be right up there as one of the most important factors. And then on the topic of experimentation, I think for me personally, experimentation is equally as important. Experimentation, personally speaking, helps me grow my craft, helps me take that next step on the creativity ladder. And I think when I'm experimenting, the images themselves at that point in time don't really matter, or they don't matter as individual images. And that was certainly the case in yesterday's so-called field shoot. Now, as I said yesterday, firstly, I wasn't really feeling it when I went out. And I kind of went out with the thought that we're going to get some sort of really great weather moving across the Skerries, which didn't happen. And so I started looking below my feet. And while there was potential there, the conditions really weren't conducive to making an image that I thought was going to be close to my vision. As we mentioned in the field, the waves were moving a little bit too quickly and the shell was getting sort of washed away, and I was having to kind of rush and recompose. The light that I thought we wanted, we weren't getting. It was kind of starting to dull down quite a lot. And so I came away with a bit of a dejected feel. Now, I've mentioned this before. I never delete images in the field. And also when I'm importing them and having a first look at them, I certainly don't delete them then either. Unless there's an obvious technical flaw like a huge overexposure or something like that. The way I look at my images is that I'm hoping that each one of those layered on top of another one is kind of starting to get me thinking in a different direction, or start to get me closer to the direction that I wanted to go in. And so as I had finished editing the vlog and had uploaded it, went and had something to eat, came back and was looking back through the images again. And images which, when I looked on the back of the camera, I judged to be completely not successful and completely just a waste of time, started to sort of fire off little sort of in the old grey matter in terms of a potential for future visits. And so what I'd like to do is just jump across to the screen, and we'll very quickly look at 3 of the images which in the field I deemed a failure. And so this first image, this is actually the shell being swept away by the incoming tide. I quite like the concept here. Now again, none of these images I would deem as final products, but it's all about kind of getting that sort of creative juices flowing. And perhaps we can call these happy mistakes. But I don't think we would have got to any of these by simply, rejecting them or deleting them on the back of the camera and not coming home and sort of looking at them further. It's almost like I needed these here, this time to look at these images and hopefully then take things further. I actually really do like the sweep of the wave across the shell. And of course the colour of the shell really helps sort of bring out that rich tone. And then of course you have a little bit of the sand showing through as well. So actually as a concept, I think this probably works. Now whether or not I want the shell to move in the future, or whether I want it to be static, who knows? But that's a huge part of play, a huge part of experimentation, the not knowing. Now this second image, and again, one of the problems that I was faced in the field was that we were losing the light that I believed that I needed to make a successful image. But actually, when I came back, now what I've had to do here is do a heck of a lot of dehaze on this. This was another one of those images where the wave was sort of flowing over the shell. In this instance, the shell wasn't really moving. But it wasn't necessarily the shell that I was interested in here. It was the colour balance. Those deep blue shadows, or the cool shadows, and then the rich warmness. I actually quite like this two-tone type shape of the image. In fact, when I was sort of playing about with it in post, it almost reminded me of the Enterprise, going to hyperspeed. But again, not a final image by any stretch of the imagination, but just sort of getting the old grey matter working, and the fact that I do believe that this sort of two-tone approach might actually be something that I want to look at. Darker, cooler sort of areas of the image, sort of combined with the richer warm tones of the sand, maybe the richer warm tones of the shell, or maybe even having the shell a bluer sort of purple colour, rather than simply always looking for a sort of a lovely rich tone shell. So again, an image that on the back of the camera looked like a complete lost job. Coming home, having a bit of play, and yes, I've had to push and pull this quite far, but again, it's just setting off some creative sparks, which hopefully will set me up in good stead for the next time that I'm approaching this sort of photography. And then this final image here. Now, what really drew my eye to this image wasn't necessarily the shell, well, at least not first and foremost. It was actually the sort of counter shapes of the waves here, how the waves are sort of flowing down this way and flowing down this way. I love the pattern that it's creating in this kind of crossover. And so it's kind of got me thinking that if we could almost have a wave that's flowing like this, or a pattern that's flowing like this, with a really nice bold shell or stone or something in the middle here that perhaps isn't being affected by the waves, that could potentially work as well. Again, having the waves sort of flowing over, but you can still sort of see through to the wet sand behind. Again, that's very appealing. And again, this was another image that completely, I thought, was a completely failed job on the back of the camera. And as an image itself, yes, it is a failure. It won't see the light of day apart from on this vlog. But just coming home, looking at the image, and looking at what appeals to me, and then trying to use that in my further work. So there you go, these three images. I say on the back of the camera, they really looked like they were failures, and they probably should have just been deleted in the field. But this is why I don't delete in the field, because I've come home, I've taken a look at them through fresh eyes, and I think there's some potential in each of them to hopefully allow me to take that next step in my creativity. And hopefully, at some point in the not too distant future, I'll get back out again and I'll be shooting on the beach, and I'll be able to kind of remember some of these images and think about creating an image based upon that hopefully will be closer to a final product. Well, there you guys. I hope you find that useful and interesting. I guess there's 2 takeaways from that. Number 1, don't forget to play and experiment more. I will keep banging this drum, even if you're just using your iPhone to play or your mobile phone to play. But play more and give yourself the permission to experiment more. And secondly, don't be too quick to delete those so-called failed images. Give yourself some distance from them. You never know, there might even be an image in there that as itself, as a standalone, actually appeals to you more sort of as time progresses. But just as importantly, there might be an image or a series of images in there that actually start to get you thinking about perhaps a different direction in your creativity, and that can only be a good thing. Well guys, thanks a lot again for following along, and again apologies it's an inside one today, but hopefully you find something useful out of that there. And I guess we shall catch up again tomorrow, day 25, over and out. See you later. Bye-bye.